Millicent Valdez had 30 seconds before her husband found her in the crowd. 30 seconds to choose between becoming cargo or becoming something far more dangerous. She chose the man whose presence made grown men flinch. The festival lights blurred into streaks of gold and red as Millicent pushed through the crowd, her heart slamming against her ribs with each frantic step. She'd been calculating odds her entire life, probability theories, logistics chains, supply and demand, but she'd never calculated this. How many steps before William caught her? How much her life was worth on the dark web? How it felt to be pre-sold like furniture? She was a big girl. Always had been. William made sure she never forgot it, weaponizing every curve, every pound, every brilliant thought in her head. Too smart for your own good, he'd say, right before making her feel stupid. Too much woman, he'd whisper, right before making her feel like nothing at all. For 3 years, she'd been shrinking herself to fit into his version of manageable, walking on eggshells that cut her feet bloody while he gambled away everything they had. Everything except her. The burner phone she'd found in his jacket pocket 2 hours ago told her exactly what she was worth. $50,000. Paid in advance. The Black Orchids didn't negotiate, they collected. And William had already spent the down payment. Millicent's breath came in sharp bursts as she scanned the festival crowd, her mind running calculations even as panic tried to drown her. She needed someone powerful, someone who could make William back off. Someone who... She saw him. He stood in the center of the crowd like a stone in a river, people flowing around him without getting too close, as if his very presence had gravity. Tall, sharp-featured, dressed in black that absorbed the festival lights, instead of reflecting them. His hair was pushed back from a face that looked carved rather than born, all angles and cold assessment, but it was his stillness that caught her. Everyone else was moving, laughing, jostling. He was perfectly, predatorily still. The men flanking him weren't friends, they were guards. She recognized the stance weight on the balls of their feet, eyes constantly scanning, hands loose at their sides. She'd optimized security rotations for her company before William made her quit. She knew what protection looked like, which meant this man needed protecting, which meant he was important, which meant he was dangerous. Her phone buzzed. William. Asterisk, I see you, baby. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Asterisk. Millicent's hands shook as she shoved the phone in her pocket. She had maybe 20 seconds now. 20 seconds before William's hands closed around her arm and dragged her to whatever shipping container the Black Orchids had waiting. 20 seconds to make a choice that would either save her life or end it faster. She moved before fear could stop her. Her fingers closed around the man's forearm solid, warm through the fabric of his shirt, and she felt him go rigid beneath her touch. His guards moved instantly, hands reaching inside their jackets, but he raised one finger and they froze. Just one finger. That kind of control didn't come from money, it came from fear. Please, Millicent said, and she hated how her voice cracked on the word. Hated that she was begging. Hated that 3 years of William had reduced her to this. But she was out of options and out of time. Please, I need you to pretend you know me. Just for a minute. Please. He turned to face her fully, and she felt the impact of his attention like stepping into a spotlight. His eyes were dark, almost black in the festival lights, and they traveled over her face with an assessment that felt clinical. Not sexual. Not even curious. Just measuring. You're trembling, he said, and his voice was quiet, almost soft, but it carried an edge that made her skin prickle. His accent shaped the words carefully, precisely. Your pupils are dilated. Your breathing is shallow. You've been crying. He tilted his head slightly, and something in his expression shifted, became almost interested. Who is hunting you in my city? My city. Not this city. Not our city. My city. Before she could answer, she felt rather than saw William pushing through the crowd behind her. She knew his rhythm, the way he moved, aggressive, entitled, taking up space he hadn't earned. Her whole body wanted to run, but she forced herself to stay rooted, her hand still gripping this stranger's arm like a lifeline. There you are. William's voice boomed across the space between them, too loud, too jovial. The tone he used when he wanted witnesses to think everything was fine. Baby, I've been looking everywhere for you. Sorry about this man, she gets confused in crowds. Remove your hand. The stranger's voice hadn't risen in volume, hadn't changed in tone, but something in it made the air feel thinner. William had been reaching for Millicent's shoulder. His hand stopped midair. I said, the man continued, still in that same quiet voice, remove your hand. She is standing with me. This means she is mine to address. You will wait. The presumption of it should have made Millicent angry. should have made her want to tell him she wasn't anyone's to claim. But William's hand had dropped, and William had taken a step back, and William was looking at this stranger with something Millicent had never seen in her husband's eyes before. Terror. I didn't know, William said, and his voice had gone thin, reedy. I didn't realize she was. I mean, we're married, but if there's been some kind of... I can come back later. What is your name? The stranger asked, and this time he was looking at Millicent, not William. His eyes held hers, and she felt weighed, measured, evaluated in ways that had nothing to do with her body and everything to do with something deeper, something she wasn't sure she wanted him to see. Millicent, she whispered. Millicent Valdez. Millicent Valdez, he repeated, as if testing how her name felt in his mouth. Then he looked past her to William, and his expression didn't change, but somehow the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Your husband has debts. The kind of debts that require alternative payment methods. You found proof of this, tonight. That is why you ran. It wasn't a question. Millicent nodded anyway. And you chose me, he continued, and now there was something in his voice she couldn't quite name. Curiosity, maybe, or amusement, or something darker. Out of thousands of people at this festival, you looked at me and decided I was worth the risk. That suggests either exceptional instinct or exceptional desperation. His head tilted again, studying her. Which is it? Millicent's throat felt dry. Over his shoulder she could see William backing away slowly, texting someone frantically. Probably his contacts. Probably the black orchids. She had minutes now, not seconds. Whatever she said next would determine whether she lived through the night. Both, she said, and forced herself to meet those dark, assessing eyes. I saw you, and I knew you were powerful. I knew people were afraid of you. I knew. She swallowed hard. I knew you were the kind of dangerous that could cancel out his kind of dangerous. That was instinct. The desperation is knowing I'd rather take my chances with you than with what he's sold me to. Something flickered across his face there and gone so fast she almost missed it. Respect, maybe, or interest. He reached up with his free hand and gently detached her fingers from his arm. For one horrible moment, she thought he was going to push her away, send her back to William, wash his hands of the mess. Instead, he laced his fingers through hers. His palm was warm, his grip firm but not painful, and the gesture looked almost casual, possessive, intimate. I am Choi Jae-young, he said, and his thumb brushed across her knuckles in a way that felt deliberate. In certain circles, I am called the Iron Dragon. The people who fear me do so because I have never shown mercy to those who waste my time or insult my intelligence. His eyes held hers, and she felt pinned, trapped, utterly seen. You have done neither. Yet. So I will ask you one question, Millicent Valdez, and your answer will decide whether you walk away from this moment alive or as something else entirely. Her hand tightened involuntarily in his. What's the question? His smile was slow, cold, and didn't reach his eyes. You have the eyes of someone who has already died once today. Why should I let you live a second time? The festival noise faded into white static. Millicent's brain, the same brain that could optimize supply chains and spot patterns in chaos, spun through possibilities at light speed. He wasn't asking if she wanted to live. He was asking why her life had value, what she could offer, what she was worth beyond the $50,000 William had sold her for. Because I'm smarter than anyone you have working for you, she said, and she didn't let her voice shake, didn't let herself shrink the way William had trained her to. I can see patterns where other people see noise. I can find leaks in your operation that your own people miss. I can make you richer, more efficient, more untouchable than you already are. She paused, then added, and because if you send me back to him, you'll never know if I was telling the truth. For 3 seconds she counted them. Jae-young said nothing, just looked at her with those fathomless dark eyes while her future hung in the balance. Then he laughed. It was a quiet sound, barely more than a breath, but she felt it reverberate through their joined hands. You're either brilliant or insane, he said. I am looking forward to finding out which. He turned, pulling her with him, and his guards fell into formation around them like wolves surrounding prey. Millicent looked back once and saw William standing frozen in the crowd, his phone still clutched in his hand, watching her disappear into the night with a man whose name made criminals cross the street. She'd been trying to escape one cage. She had no idea she'd just walked into another one with velvet bars and blood-stained floors, and a dragon who'd already decided he wanted to keep her. The question wasn't whether she'd survive. The question was what she'd become by the time she did. The car smelled like leather and gunpowder. Millicent sat perfectly still in the back seat, hyper-aware of Jae-young beside her, his presence taking up more space than his body actually occupied. His guards drove in silence, and she tracked their route through Chicago's streets with the part of her brain that never stopped calculating. North, then west, away from the festival, away from William, away from everything familiar. "You're mapping our route," Jae-young said, and it wasn't a question. He was looking at his phone, scrolling through something, but somehow he'd noticed her eyes tracking the turns. Smart. Useless, but smart. Why useless? Because even if you memorized every street, you have nowhere to run. He glanced at her, and in the passing streetlights, his face was all sharp shadows. "Your husband's debt is real. The black orchids are real. The moment you step outside my protection, you're theirs. You understand this?" "Yes?" Millicent's stomach twisted, but she kept her voice steady. "I understand I traded one trap for another. Trap implies you want to leave." He pocketed his phone and turned to face her fully. "Do you want to leave, Millicent Valdez?" Her mouth went dry. This felt like a test, and she didn't know the right answer. "I want to survive." Survival is baseline. What do you want beyond breathing? The question hit her harder than it should have. What did she want? She'd spent 3 years wanting William to stop, wanting to disappear. When had she stopped wanting things for herself? "I want to not be property," she said finally. "I want to stop calculating how to make myself smaller. I want—" She stopped, because the words felt too raw, too revealing. "You want to matter," Jae-young finished softly. "You want someone to see that brilliant mind and not feel threatened by it. You want to be valuable for what you can do, not what you can be sold for." She stared at him, unnerved by how precisely he'd reached into her chest and pulled out truths she'd barely admitted to herself. "How did you—" "I collect useful people," he interrupted. "I'm very good at knowing what they need. What motivates them. What breaks them." He leaned closer, and she could see gold flecks in his dark eyes. "I'm also very good at knowing when someone is lying to me. So, I'm going to ask you again, and you're going to tell me the truth this time. What makes you think you're smarter than anyone working for me?" This was it. Her audition, her only shot at being more than cargo. Millicent took a breath and made herself meet his eyes. "Your guards are rotating on a 4-hour shift pattern, but the festival has been going for 6 hours. That means either you've been there less than 4 hours, or they're already fatigued and making mistakes. The one on your left kept touching his left side old injury, probably ribs, which means he shouldn't be in active duty. The driver took 3 unnecessary turns getting here, which means either he's inexperienced with evasive driving, or you're testing me to see if I notice." She paused. "And you're wearing a shoulder holster under that jacket, but you haven't touched it once since I grabbed you. You're not afraid of William. You're not even a little bit concerned, which means either you're suicidal, or you already knew who I was before I touched you." The silence in the car was absolute. Then Jae-young smiled, and it was nothing like his earlier cold amusement. This smile was sharp, hungry, and it made her pulse spike in ways that had nothing to do with fear. "Director Min," he said, and the woman in the passenger seat turned around. She was stunning, elegant features, eyes like flint, mouth pressed in a line of obvious disapproval. She noticed the route, the rotation, the injury, and the holster in under 5 minutes. "What does that tell you?" Min's gaze swept over Millicent with open hostility. "It tells me she's observant. It doesn't tell me she's loyal." "Loyalty can be built," Jae-young said. "Intelligence like this is born." He looked back at Millicent. "You were right. I was testing you. And you were also right about something else. I did know who you were before you touched me. I've been watching William for 3 weeks. He's been selling information to people who want me dead, and I was very curious about what he'd do when his own debts came due." His hand moved, fast, and suddenly he was holding her phone, the one she'd shoved in her pocket, the one with William's messages. "You were his insurance policy, his way out, his last liquidated asset." Millicent felt ice slide down her spine. "You've been watching him, which means you've been watching me." "Yes, which means you didn't save me tonight. You collected me." His smile widened. "What makes you think those are different things?" The car pulled to a stop in front of a building that looked like an old industrial warehouse, concrete, steel. No windows on the ground floor. Not a prison, not a palace, something in between. Jae-young opened the door and stepped out, then offered her his hand. Millicent looked at it, looked at the building, looked at Director Min's cold stare that promised violence if she made the wrong choice. She'd crossed one deadly line tonight. This felt like another. She took his hand. The warehouse interior was nothing like Millicent expected. No dark corners or shadowy figures. Instead, it looked like the nerve center of a legitimate corporation. Rows of computers, people working quietly at desks, walls covered with maps and shipping manifests. If she didn't know better, she'd think she'd walked into a logistics company. Maybe that was the point. "You look surprised," Jae-young said, still holding her hand as he led her through the space. People glanced up, registered her presence with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion, then returned to their work. Nobody questioned why their boss was holding hands with a stranger. "I expected something different," Millicent admitted. "Guns and drugs and violence?" His tone was almost amused. "That's what everyone expects. The reality is far more boring. Import, export, container management, tax optimization." He paused at a desk where a young man was frantically typing, eyes glued to 3 monitors. Legal businesses that generate illegal profits. The best way to hide money isn't in the dark, it's in plain sight. Director Min appeared at his elbow, tablet in hand. "The Portland shipment is delayed again. 3 hours. They're blaming weather, but weather doesn't explain why the same crew has had issues 4 times this month." Millicent interrupted, and immediately regretted it when Min's eyes sliced toward her like knives. "Excuse me?" Millicent's heart hammered, but she'd already started. "Might as well finish. You said 4 times. That's not weather. That's either incompetence or someone skimming. If they're delaying shipments, they're creating windows to offload product. Small amounts, untraceable in the chaos of fixing the delay." The silence that followed felt dangerous. Then Jae-young released her hand and took the tablet from Min, scrolling through screens too fast for Millicent to follow. "The crew chief in Portland. How long has he worked for us?" 8 months, Min said, her voice flat. Professional. But her eyes on Millicent promised retribution. Run a full audit. Bank accounts, spending patterns, associates. If she's right. He looked at Millicent, and something in his expression made her breath catch. Not anger. Not even surprise. Interest. Raw, focused interest. "If she's right, I want his supplier list by morning." "And if she's wrong?" Min asked. "Then we'll know she's not as smart as she thinks." Millicent's throat went dry, but she forced herself to stand straight, to not shrink under Min's hostile glare or Jae-young's assessing gaze. She'd just gambled on a pattern she'd spotted in 30 seconds. If she was wrong, she'd just proven herself worthless. If she was right, she'd proven herself dangerous. Being worthless would probably get her sold. Being dangerous might get her killed. Jae-young moved deeper into the warehouse, and Millicent followed because staying put felt worse. They stopped at a glass-walled office overlooking the operation floor. Inside, the furniture was utilitarian metal desk, functional chairs, filing cabinets. No luxury, no ostentation, just efficiency. "Sit," he said, and she did. He remained standing, looking down at her with that unreadable expression she was starting to recognize as his default. "You've been here 10 minutes and you've already identified a potential leak in my operation. You've analyzed my security, my routes, my behavior. You notice things other people miss." He leaned against the desk, arms crossed. "That makes you either the most valuable person I've met this year, or a threat I should eliminate before you learn too much. I haven't decided which yet." The casual way he said it, like he was discussing weather patterns instead of her murder, made her stomach drop. "I'm not a threat," she said. "Everyone is a threat until they prove otherwise." He tilted his head. "You want to survive, you want to matter. I can give you both. But understand this. Millicent, the moment you walked in here, you became part of my world. There is no going back to your old life. There is no neutral ground. You are either with me, completely, or you're a liability I cannot afford. And William is no longer your concern. He's mine." Something cold flickered across Jae-young's face. "He sold information about my shipments to a task force that's been trying to dismantle my organization for 2 years. He sold you to cover his losses. He's a dead man who just doesn't know it yet." He pushed off the desk and moved to the window, looking down at his people working below. "The only question is whether you die with him, or whether you help me destroy everyone who thought they could use you as leverage against me." Millicent's mind raced. This wasn't a rescue. This was recruitment. He'd been watching William, waiting, and she'd played right into his hands by grabbing him in that crowd. She wasn't his damsel. She was his weapon. And the terrifying part? She wasn't sure she wanted to refuse. "What do you need me to do?" she asked. His reflection in the glass smiled. "Prove you're worth keeping." Jae-young gave her a laptop and 3 hours of shipping manifests. No instructions, no guidance, just data and the silent expectation that she'd find something worth finding. Millicent sat at a desk on the operations floor, hyper-aware of the hostile stares from Jae-young's people. Director Min had positioned herself across the room, typing with aggressive precision, radiating disapproval. Every few minutes, someone would walk past Millicent's desk just close enough to remind her she didn't belong. She ignored them and dove into the numbers. At first, nothing stood out. Standard shipping routes, normal container weights, typical port delays. But Millicent had spent years optimizing supply chains, and she knew how to spot anomalies hidden in patterns. She started cross-referencing timestamps, crew assignments, destination ports. 40 minutes in, she found it. "The Portland leak isn't the problem," she said, loud enough to carry across the room. "It's a symptom." The typing stopped. The room went quiet. Millicent felt dozens of eyes on her back, but she kept her focus on the laptop screen, on the pattern she'd uncovered that made her stomach turn. Jae-young appeared at her shoulder so quietly she flinched. "Explain." Millicent pulled up 3 spreadsheets, fingers flying across the keyboard. Portland, Seattle, and Vancouver. 3 different crews, 3 different ports, but look at the timing. Every delay happens on the same day of the month, the 15th, every single time for the past 6 months. She highlighted the data. That's not coincidence. That's coordination. Someone's orchestrating delays across multiple ports simultaneously to create windows for theft, Jae-young said, and his voice had gone dangerously soft. Not just theft, cover. Millicent opened another file, this one showing container weights. These shipments are still arriving at full weight. Nothing's missing, but the GPS trackers show 18-minute gaps in 3 locations, exactly long enough for a container to be opened, contents photographed or documented, then resealed. Someone's not stealing your product. They're collecting evidence. The silence that followed felt suffocating. Director Min moved first, coming around the desk to look at the screen. Her expression was unreadable, but her jaw was tight. "If she's right, she is right," Jae-young interrupted. "Which means someone in my organization has been feeding information to the task force for 6 months. Someone with access to schedules, routes, and crew assignments. Someone close." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Millicent watched Min's face carefully, saw the moment the woman realized she was under suspicion. Min ran operations. Min had access to everything. "You think I—" Min's voice was ice. "I think someone is," Jae-young said. "And we're going to find out who." He looked at Millicent. "Can you trace the coordination? Find the common point where all 3 ports received their delay orders?" Millicent's heart raced. This was bigger than proving her worth. This was walking into the middle of a war she barely understood. But backing down now would be worse than failing. "Give me access to your internal communications," she said. "Emails, messages, scheduling systems. If someone's coordinating these delays, they're leaving digital fingerprints." "Absolutely not," Min snapped. "We don't know anything about her. She could be the only reason we're not already in federal custody," Jae-young cut in. His eyes never left Millicent's face. "In 3 hours, she found a pattern my entire intelligence network missed for 6 months. Either she's the smartest person in this building, or she's part of the problem." He leaned closer, and Millicent could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that made her pulse spike. "Which is it, Millicent?" This was the real test. He was giving her rope to either save herself or hang herself with. "I'm the smartest person in this building," she said, and forced herself to hold his gaze. "And if you want to survive whatever's coming, you need to accept that." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe, or respect, or something more dangerous. He straightened, pulled out his phone, and typed rapidly. Millicent's laptop pinged with incoming access credentials. "You have 72 hours to find my traitor," he said. "After that, if you haven't delivered results, I'll assume you're protecting someone, and I don't keep people who protect my enemies." Director Min's expression promised murder. Millicent's hands were shaking as she logged into the system, but she kept her voice steady. "I'll need coffee, and I'll need everyone to stop looking at me like they're measuring me for a grave. It's distracting." Jae-young's laugh was quiet, almost surprised. "Get her coffee," he said to no one in particular. Then to Millicent, "You have 72 hours to prove you're not a dead woman walking. I suggest you don't sleep." He walked away, and Millicent stared at her screen, at the access she now had to every secret in his organization, and realized she'd just crossed another line. This one might be the one that killed her. 42 hours into her 72-hour deadline, Millicent's eyes burned and her back ached, but she couldn't stop. The warehouse had emptied around 2 a.m., leaving only security and a skeleton crew monitoring overseas shipments, and Millicent, drowning in communication logs. She'd built a timeline. Every email, every text, every phone call related to the coordinated delays. The pattern was there, buried under layers of legitimate business communication, but it was there. Whoever was feeding information to the task force was good, professional, patient, too patient. "You're still here." Millicent jumped, coffee sloshing over the rim of her mug. Jae-young stood 3 feet away, and she had no idea how long he'd been watching. He looked different at this hour, jacket gone, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly disheveled, more human, more dangerous. "I'm close," she said, wiping spilled coffee from her keyboard. "The communication pattern doesn't match what I expected." He moved around her desk, looking at her screens. This close, she could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell that dark scent that made her thoughts scatter. What did you expect? Someone panicking, making mistakes, getting sloppy. Millicent pulled up a message thread, hands shaking from too much caffeine and too little sleep. But look at this. Every message is perfectly timed. Every delay request has legitimate cover. The coordination is almost elegant. Elegant, Jae-young repeated, and something in his voice made her look up. That's an interesting word choice. It's the only word that fits. This person isn't afraid of being caught. They're confident. They think they're untouchable. She scrolled through more data, which means they're either very high up in your organization, or they're not in my organization at all, he finished. They're in the task force, coordinating from the outside. The possibility hit Millicent like cold water. If the task force is manufacturing evidence instead of collecting it, then William wasn't just selling information. He was the plant, Jae-young said softly, sent to get close to someone in my world. Someone who could give him access. His eyes locked on hers. Someone like you. Millicent's blood went cold. I never gave him access to anything. I quit my job when we got married. Did you? Jae-young pulled up a chair, sat down facing her. Too close. Close enough that she could see gold flecks in his dark eyes. Think carefully, Millicent. Did William ever ask about your work, your old boss, your security clearances? She tried to remember. 3 years of walking on eggshells, of making herself smaller, of surviving, but underneath the fear, there were questions. Casual questions. About her old company, about shipping routes, about, oh God, her voice came out strangled. My old company. We handled customs clearances for international shipments. William asked me about it once. Twice. I thought he was just making conversation, but he was mapping your knowledge, Jae-young said. Finding out what you knew. What you could access if he convinced you to go back, or what you'd already told him without realizing it. Millicent felt sick. He married me to get information about shipping logistics? He married you because someone told him you were brilliant and you worked in an industry they needed to infiltrate. The abuse, the control, the isolation that was all designed to make you dependent, vulnerable, easy to manipulate. Jae-young's jaw tightened. They underestimated you. They thought breaking you down would make you compliant. Instead, it made you desperate enough to grab a stranger in a crowd and gamble everything on 30 seconds of courage. The way he said it, not with pity, but with something that felt like respect, made her chest tight. If William was the plant, she said slowly, working through the implications, then the black orchids don't exist, Jae-young finished. Or they do, but the contract was fake. Bait to make you run, to make you desperate enough to do something unpredictable, something that would expose you to. He stopped, eyes narrowing. To me, they wanted you to come to me. The silence stretched between them, heavy with realization. I'm not here by accident, Millicent whispered. This whole thing, the burner phone, the festival, grabbing you, it was all designed to put me exactly where I am right now, inside your organization, with access to everything. Yes, Jae-young said. Which means in approximately 54 hours, when you inevitably find evidence pointing to whoever they want me to eliminate, the task force will move in. They'll have their case, they'll have their raid, and they'll have destroyed me from the inside using the smartest weapon they could find. He stood, looked down at her with an expression she couldn't read. The question is whether you knew, or whether you're as much a victim as I am. Millicent met his eyes and saw the truth there. If she couldn't prove her innocence in the next 54 hours, he would kill her, and she wouldn't even blame him. Millicent didn't sleep. She couldn't. Instead, she tore through her own life like she was investigating a stranger. Every conversation with William, every question he'd asked, every casual comment about her old job. She built a timeline of her own manipulation, and each entry made her feel sicker. But it also made her angry. The sun was rising when she found it, buried in her old work emails that she'd barely looked at in 3 years. A message from her former supervisor at the customs clearance company, sent 2 weeks before she met William. Millicent, heads up. Someone from the Department of Commerce called asking about you. Wanted to know about your clearance level and what projects you'd worked on. I didn't give them anything, but thought you should know. Seemed odd. Marcus. She'd never seen this email. She'd changed her personal email password a month after marrying William. He'd convinced her it was safer that way, but he must have had access before that. He'd known she was being investigated before he ever introduced himself to her at that networking event. Their entire relationship had been premeditated. You found something. Millicent looked up to find Jae-young standing at her desk again, holding 2 cups of coffee. He looked like he hadn't slept either. Dark circles under his eyes, tension in his shoulders. He set 1 cup in front of her without asking if she wanted it. Proof I didn't know, she said, turning her laptop so he could see. Someone from the Department of Commerce was asking about me 2 weeks before I met William. He targeted me. I didn't target you. Jae-young read the email. Expression unreadable. This proves you were investigated. It doesn't prove you weren't turned. If I was working with them, why would I show you this? Her voice came out sharper than intended, exhaustion and fear making her reckless. Why would I give you ammunition to use against me? Because you're smart enough to know that the best lies contain truth, he said, but something in his tone had softened. Or because you're telling the truth and you're terrified I won't believe you. Both, Millicent admitted. I'm terrified you won't believe me, but I'm more terrified that even if you do, it won't matter. They spent 3 years positioning me. They're not going to stop just because I figured it out. Jae-young pulled up a chair, sat close enough that their knees almost touched. Then we need to figure out their endgame. If they wanted you inside my organization, what were you supposed to find? Or plant? Or destroy? Millicent's mind raced. The coordinated delays, the evidence collection. They're building a case, but they need something solid, something that ties you directly to illegal activity, something they can present to a judge. I'm careful, Jae-young said. Everything traceable is legitimate. The illegal work is compartmentalized, handled by people who don't report directly to me. There's no paper trail. Then they need to create one, Millicent said slowly. That's what I'm here for. They knew I'd offer to audit your systems. They knew you'd be suspicious enough to test me. They knew I'd find the delays because... She stopped, ice sliding through her veins. Because they wanted me to find them. The delays are fake. The whole investigation is fake. They're baiting you into making a move. Jae-young's eyes narrowed. What kind of move? The kind that would expose your real operation. If you investigate the delays, you'll have to contact your actual distribution network. The legitimate side will intersect with the illegal side. They're creating a scenario where you have to connect the dots yourself. And when you do, they'll be watching. The silence that followed felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. You're saying if I follow this investigation to its conclusion, I'll lead them directly to evidence they couldn't find on their own. Yes, Millicent whispered. And I'm the mechanism. By giving me access to everything, by trusting me to find the leak, you're doing exactly what they designed me to make you do. Jae-young stood abruptly, walked to the window overlooking the operations floor. Dawn light cut across his face, highlighting the tension in his jaw. Then we don't follow their script. What do you mean? He turned back to her, and there was something dangerous in his expression. Something calculating. They weaponized you against me. What if we weaponize you against them? Millicent's heart hammered. How? You said William was the plant, which means he's reporting back. He thinks you're exactly where they want you. Jae-young's smile was cold, sharp. What if we feed him exactly what they want to hear, but we control the information? What if we turn their own trap against them? That's insane, Millicent said. If we're wrong, if they catch on, if we're wrong, we're dead anyway, Jae-young interrupted. At least this way, we die fighting instead of dancing to their choreography. He held out his hand. An offer, a partnership, a mutual suicide pact disguised as strategy. Millicent looked at his hand, at his face, at the man who'd been watching her for weeks before she ever knew his name. The man who'd collected her like a weapon but was now offering to let her point herself in a different direction. She took his hand. Tell me how we burn them, she said. His smile was terrifying. With pleasure. The plan was simple. Dangerous, but simple. Millicent would contact William, tell him she'd found something in Jae-young's files, something big enough to take him down. She'd arrange a meeting, and when William brought his task force handlers to collect the evidence, Jae-young would be ready with proof of their conspiracy. Simple. Except Millicent's hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold her phone. "You don't have to do this," Jae-young said. They were in his private office, door locked, security posted outside. He'd been teaching her what to say, how to sound desperate but not suspicious. "I can find another way." "There is no other way." Millicent stared at William's number on her screen. "He thinks I'm his victim. His escape route. If the message comes from anyone else, he'll know it's a trap. If he hears fear in your voice, he'll use it against you." I know. She did know. 3 years of marriage had taught her exactly how William operated, how he weaponized her emotions, how he made her doubt her own reality. But I also know how to give him what he expects, how to be small enough that he feels powerful. Jae-young moved closer, and she felt the heat of him at her back. Not touching, just present. "You're not small, Millicent. You've never been small. He just convinced you to fold yourself into something he could control." The words hit deeper than they should have. She looked up at him, at this man who'd been a stranger 4 days ago, and was now the only person who knew exactly how thoroughly she'd been played. "What if I can't do it?" she whispered. "What if I hear his voice and I just break? Then I'll be listening on the other line, and I'll end the call." His hand came up, hovering near her shoulder, asking permission. When she didn't pull away, he let it settle there solid, warm, grounding. "And then we'll find another way. But Millicent?" He waited until she met his eyes. "You're stronger than you think. Stronger than he ever let you believe. If you weren't, you'd never have grabbed a stranger in a crowd and gambled your life on 30 seconds of instinct." She took a breath, then another. Then she pressed the call button before fear could stop her. It rang 3 times. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Maybe he wouldn't answer. Maybe. "Millicent?" William's voice poured through the speaker like poison disguised as honey. "Baby, I've been so worried. Where are you? Are you safe?" The concern sounded genuine. It probably would have fooled her a week ago. "I'm scared," she said, and she let her voice crack exactly the way he'd expect. "William, I made a mistake. A really bad mistake." "What did you do?" "Not worried now. Alert. Focused. I grabbed someone at the festival. Some guy. I thought he could help me, but..." She swallowed hard, selling the fear. "He's dangerous, William. Really dangerous. He brought me to this warehouse, and he's been asking questions about shipping routes and customs clearances, and I think..." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I think he knows what I used to do, and he's making me look through his files." Silence. She could almost hear William's brain working, calculating. "What kind of files?" he asked carefully. "Everything. Import manifests, distribution networks, financial records. He thinks I can optimize his operation. But William, some of these shipments, they're not legal. I've seen things. Evidence. Enough to..." She stopped, as if afraid to say it out loud. "Enough to what, Millicent? Enough to destroy him. If someone knew where to look." She paused, then added the hook. "I documented everything. I thought if I could get evidence, if I could prove he's a criminal, maybe someone would help me get away from him. Maybe the police would..." "Where are you?" William's voice had gone sharp, hungry. "I can't tell you over the phone. What if he's listening? What if..." "Millicent, listen to me very carefully." William's tone shifted, became the one he used when he wanted her compliant. Soothing, but with an edge. "You did good. You did exactly the right thing. I'm going to help you, but I need you to stay calm. Can you get away tomorrow night? Just for a few hours?" "I think so. He's having some kind of meeting. Security will be focused on that." "Perfect. There's a coffee shop on West Adams, near the park. Crow's Nest. Meet me there at 8 p.m. Bring whatever evidence you collected. We'll figure this out together, okay? I promise, baby, I'm going to get you out of this." Millicent closed her eyes, remembering all the times she'd believed those promises. All the times she'd thought he actually cared. "Okay," she said, small and broken. "Okay, I'll be there." "That's my girl," William said, and she heard the smile in his voice. The satisfaction. "Everything's going to be fine. I'll take care of you." The line went dead. Millicent sat frozen, phone still pressed to her ear, until Jae-young gently took it from her shaking hands. "You did it," he said quietly. He called me his girl. Her voice sounded hollow. Even now, even when he's setting me up to be collected like cargo, she couldn't finish. Jae Young crouched in front of her chair so they were eye level. Tomorrow night, when he walks into that coffee shop expecting a broken woman with evidence, he's going to find out exactly what happens when you underestimate Millicent Valdez. His eyes were dark, fierce. And I'm going to make sure he never calls you his anything ever again. For the first time in 3 years, Millicent believed someone might actually keep that promise. 24 hours until the meeting. Jae Young spent them turning Millicent into bait that could bite back. You'll be wired, he said, fitting a nearly invisible earpiece into her ear. Audio and video. I'll have 3 teams positioned around the coffee shop inside, outside, and mobile. The moment William brings his handlers, we'll have everything on record. Millicent stood still while he worked, hyper-aware of his fingers brushing her jaw, her throat, adjusting the hidden camera disguised as a necklace. What if he searches me? He won't. He thinks you're his victim. Victims don't wear wires. Jae Young stepped back, examining his work. But if he does, the equipment is designed to look like regular jewelry and a hearing aid. You're covered. And if something goes wrong? His eyes met hers. Then I come in, and we deal with the consequences. The plan was solid. Almost too solid. Millicent couldn't shake the feeling they were missing something, but she didn't know what. Director Min appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. Her expression was carefully neutral, but Millicent had learned to read the tension in her shoulders. The Portland crew chief. You were right about him. He's been skimming for 8 months. Small amounts. Careful. But he left a trail. How much? Jae Young asked. Enough to buy a house in cash. But that's not all. We pulled his phone records. He's been receiving calls from a blocked number, same number that called him right before each coordinated delay. Someone was using him for both his greed and their operation. So he was skimming and being manipulated by the task force, Millicent said, the pieces clicking together. They found out about his theft and leveraged it, made him create delays for evidence collection by threatening to expose his skimming. Min's eyes flicked to Millicent. She's good. I'll give her that. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was close enough. Millicent nodded acknowledgement. What do you want done with him? Min continued. Nothing yet, Jae Young said. If we move on him now, the task force will know we're aware of their surveillance. Let him think he's safe until after tomorrow night. Min left, and silence settled between them. Outside the office window, the warehouse hummed with activity. People working, unaware that in less than 24 hours, everything could fall apart. You should eat something, Jae Young said. I can't. Millicent's stomach was twisted in knots. Every time I close my eyes, I hear his voice. That's my girl. Like I'm still his possession. Like 3 years of controlling me gives him permanent ownership. He doesn't own you. Jae Young moved to the window, looking out at his operation. He never did. He just convinced you he did. There's a difference. Is there? The question came out bitter. Because right now, I'm still dancing to his choreography. Still letting him dictate my choices. Still, you're using his expectations against him, Jae Young interrupted, turning to face her. That's not the same as being controlled. That's strategy. He paused, then added quietly. You're not the same woman who grabbed my arm at that festival. You're angrier now. Sharper. That's dangerous for him. Millicent met his eyes, and something passed between them, understanding. Maybe, or recognition. 2 people who'd been underestimated their entire lives finally seeing themselves reflected in someone else. What happens after tomorrow? She asked. If we survive this, if we expose the task force, if everything works, what happens to me? Jae Young was quiet for a long moment. What do you want to happen? I don't know. It was the most honest answer she could give. A week ago, I wanted to disappear. Now I've found out my entire life was manufactured. My marriage was fake. My escape was choreographed. Even my decision to grab you, that was what they wanted. Her voice cracked. I don't know what's real anymore. This is real. Jae Young gestured between them. This conversation, this choice. Tomorrow night, you're going to walk into that coffee shop and face the man who spent 3 years breaking you down. And you're going to do it knowing exactly what he is. That's real. That's yours. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his expression went cold. What is it? Millicent asked. William just bought a plane ticket. Jae Young turned the phone so she could see. One way to Mexico City. Leaving tomorrow night at 10 p.m. The implications hit her like ice water. 2 hours after our meeting. He's not planning to interrogate you, Jae-young said slowly. He's planning to collect you and run. The meeting isn't about evidence. It's about extraction. Millicent felt the ground shift under her feet. They're cutting him loose. William's not bringing handlers to the coffee shop. He's grabbing me and disappearing before the task force can clean up their mess. Which means we just walked into a completely different trap than the one we prepared for. They stared at each other, and Millicent saw her own fear reflected in Jae-young's eyes. They had 18 hours to figure out how to survive a plan that had just changed underneath them, and William already had a head start. He's running scared. Jae-young pulled up William's financial records on his laptop, records that shouldn't have been accessible but somehow were. Look at this. He's been liquidating assets for 2 weeks. Small amounts. Nothing that would trigger alerts. But it adds up to almost $70,000 in cash. Millicent leaned over his shoulder, scanning the transactions. Her brain automatically cataloged patterns, timelines, anomalies. The first withdrawal was the day after I grabbed you at the festival. He's been planning his exit since the moment I disappeared, which means he knew his usefulness was ending. Jae-young scrolled deeper. The task force used him to position you. Now that you're inside my organization, he's a liability they can't afford. So they told him to collect me and run. Millicent's stomach turned, make it look like a desperate husband rescuing his wife. When we disappear, the task force closes their investigation, claims insufficient evidence, and I become a body that washes up in the Gulf of Mexico 6 months from now. Jae-young finished coldly. With William conveniently dead beside you. Murder-suicide. Tragic ending to an abusive marriage. No loose ends. The calculation of it made Millicent's skin crawl. They're killing 2 assets with 1 flight. 3. Jae-young's jaw tightened. Without William's testimony, they have no case against me. The investigation collapses. They walk away clean. And I'm left wondering which of my people was actually compromised. He looked at her. You were never meant to destroy me from inside. You were meant to be a distraction while they cleaned house. Millicent sat down heavily, her mind racing. If William's planning to grab me at the coffee shop, he won't come alone. He'll need help to control me, transport me, get me to the airport. Hired muscle, Jae-young agreed. Probably local. Cheap. Disposable. The kind of men who don't ask questions about crying women being forced into cars. So we let him try. The words came out before Millicent fully thought them through. But once she said them, the plan crystallized in her mind. We let him think he's succeeding. Let him take me to the airport. Follow us. And when he thinks he's won, we take everything from him, Jae-young said. And there was something dark in his voice. Something that should have scared her but instead felt like justice. His money, his escape route, his life. The task force will know, Millicent said. When he doesn't board that flight, when I don't disappear, let them know. Jae-young stood, began pacing. Let them scramble to figure out what went wrong. While they're panicking, we'll have everything we need. William's communications with his handlers. Proof of the task force's conspiracy. Evidence of attempted kidnapping. We flipped the entire operation. It was audacious. Reckless. The kind of plan that could get them both killed. Millicent found herself smiling. You're insane, says the woman who grabbed a crime boss in a crowd to escape a fake human trafficking contract. Fair point. She stood, moved to stand beside him at the window. Below, the warehouse continued its steady rhythm. Normal operations hiding extraordinary crimes. If we do this, if we let William take me, I need you to promise me something. What? That you won't let him get me on that plane. She turned to face him, and the fear she'd been holding back finally showed. I know the plan is solid. I know we'll have tracking and backup and surveillance. But if something goes wrong, if he actually manages to, her voice cracked. I can't end up in Mexico with him, Jae-young. I can't go back to being his property. I'd rather die. He was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. Then he reached out and took her hand the same way he had at the festival, when she'd been a desperate stranger gambling everything on his mercy. You won't be alone, he said quietly. Not for a second. The moment you feel unsafe, you say the word and I end it. Consequences be damned. What word? He thought about it. Dragon. You say dragon, and I come for you. Everything else stops. The plan, the surveillance, the strategy. None of it matters more than getting you out. Millicent looked at their joined hands. At this man who'd started as her captor and somehow become her partner. Who saw her intelligence as an asset, not a threat. Who offered protection without demanding submission in return. Why are you doing this? She asked. You could have let William take me. Let the problem solve itself. Why risk your organization, your life, for someone you barely know? Jae-young's thumb brushed across her knuckles, and his eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. Because you grabbed my arm in a crowd when you had every reason to keep running. Because you're brave enough to face the man who broke you. Because I've spent my entire life surrounded by people who fear me, and you're the first person who looked at me and saw possibility instead of threat. The air between them felt charged, dangerous. Tomorrow night, Millicent said softly, we end this. Tomorrow night, he agreed. We burn their entire operation to the ground. And for the first time since she'd found that burner phone in William's jacket, Millicent believed she might actually survive what came next. The coffee shop smelled like burnt espresso and old pastries. Millicent sat at a corner table, hands wrapped around a cup she hadn't touched, watching the door. The wire under her blouse felt like a brand against her skin. Through the nearly invisible earpiece, she heard Jae-young's steady breathing. I'm here, he said quietly. 3 tables behind you. You're not alone. She didn't turn around. Didn't need to. Just knowing he was there made her spine straighten, her shoulders settle. William walked in at exactly 8 p.m. He looked different, thinner, eyes darting, the confident swagger replaced by something desperate. He spotted her and smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Millicent. Baby. I'm so glad you're safe. He slid into the seat across from her, reaching for her hands. She let him take them. Felt his palms sweaty against hers. Did you bring the evidence? In my bag, she said, nodding to the laptop case beside her chair. Everything you asked for. His eyes lit up. Good, that's good. Listen, we need to leave. Now. My car's outside. I can't just leave, Millicent said, playing her part. What if he's watching? What if... I'll protect you, William interrupted, squeezing her hands too tight. I always have, haven't I? I'm your husband. I know things got rough sometimes, but that was just stress, baby. Once we're away from here, once we're safe, everything will go back to normal, I promise. Normal. 3 years of eggshells and calculated cruelty. That was his normal. Where are we going? She asked. Somewhere safe. Somewhere he can't find us. William stood, pulling her up with him. Come on, we don't have much time. Through the earpiece, Jae-young's voice was ice. 2 men just entered. East entrance. Hired muscle. Stay with him. Millicent let William guide her toward the door, toward the car idling outside with 2 large men in the front seats. Her heart hammered, but she kept her breathing steady. Trust the plan. Trust Jae-young. William opened the back door. Get in, baby, everything's going to be fine. The moment Millicent's foot touched the car's interior, 3 vehicles blocked the street. Doors opened. Men emerged, Jae-young's people, moving with coordinated precision. And then Jae-young himself, stepping out of the coffee shop, phone held high. Got everything, he said calmly. Audio, video, attempted kidnapping, proof of conspiracy. The task force is going to have a very interesting morning. William's face went white. You were working with him? Millicent turned, looked at the man who'd spent 3 years making her feel small. No, William. I was working with myself. I just finally found someone who didn't need me small to feel big. William lunged for her, but Jae-young was faster. One movement, clean and efficient, and William was on the ground, zip-tied, while sirens wailed in the distance. Not the task force, Jae-young said, watching the police cars approach. Real police, the ones who aren't on anyone's payroll. They're very interested in a conspiracy to manufacture evidence against a legal business owner. 3 months later, Millicent stood in the warehouse that no longer felt like a cage. She'd restructured Jae-young's entire operation, legitimized what could be legitimized, separated what couldn't be. Director Min had become something close to a friend. The Portland crew chief was serving time. William was awaiting trial. The task force was under federal investigation, and Jae-young stood beside her, watching the operations floor, their shoulders almost touching. I got an offer, Millicent said quietly. My old company, full reinstatement, raise, corner office. She felt him tense. Will you take it? No. She turned to face him, saw the relief flash across his face before he could hide it. I'm going to start my own consulting firm. Legitimate logistics optimization for legitimate businesses. And you're going to be my first client. Consultant, he said, and something warm flickered in his eyes. Not employee, not partner, consultant. Equal footing, she confirmed. I don't do cages anymore, not even velvet ones. He smiled a real smile, rare and devastating. I wouldn't expect anything less. They weren't lovers. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But they were something better, two people who'd found strength in each other's survival, who'd burned down the systems designed to break them and built something new from the ashes. Millicent Valdez had grabbed a stranger in a crowd and crossed a deadly line. She'd found herself on the other side. The strongest steel is forged in the hottest fire. Sometimes what breaks you is exactly what teaches you how to rebuild yourself into something unbreakable. If this story grabbed you like Millicent grabbed Jay Young in that crowd, follow for more dark romance tales where strength isn't given, it's earned. Drop A if you want to see what happens when broken people refuse to stay broken.